Hello and welcome to episode 62 of the Star Bros podcast. An episode 5 years in the making, some would say, because tonight, what is it that we're talking about? Co-host, bro-host, Ben Skywalker.
Well, bro host Jan Solo, we are talking about The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi.
This will be the last conversation on The Last Jedi we ever have, right?
Maybe.
No,
Maybe.
never. It's never going to end. It never should end because it was a great movie. And for you that didn't like it, it'll never end because you'll always talk about why it wasn't a great movie. So the conversation will always continue.
And
But
so
tonight is special.
what's this episode called?
5 years later, saltier than crate.
Saltier than great. Because some people still are. And I tweeted that we were going to be talking about this episode, and that tweet got a lot of attention. But one of the things I mentioned was, can't believe it's been 5 years and we've been talking about it the whole time.
The whole time.
So I think it's fair to say it could be 5 years from now. We'll come up with another punny name and we'll see it from a different angle, a different perspective.
By the way, our listeners should know that credit is due to you for this episode title.
Me?
Not me. You came up with the punny name. I know I'm like the king of puns over here, and I'm always the one doing it, but
I'm not even a dad. What can I say?
yeah, you've got a little Grogu, don't you, somewhere in the house?
Yeah, I do somewhere. Yes.
You've got Wrigley too, right?
Yeah.
So you're just a dad of other creatures.
All right. So a little bit of a dad joke. But I'm excited to talk about this topic. I can't believe it's been 5 years.
I can't either. Can you tell our listeners where we were 5 years ago? Kind of recount the story. You're a good storyteller.
Sure. Thank you for saying that.
You're
So
welcome.
5 years ago tonight, we had already seen The Last
True,
Jedi.
because we saw it on the Thursday.
We saw it on Thursday, December 14th, 2017. And a lot of buildup, a lot of excitement. We're not that far away from The Force Awakens, and we're jumping into the middle chapter of the sequel trilogy, and it really kind of felt like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're getting another Star Wars movie around Christmas time, and how amazing is this?
Yeah.
And an image that sticks out in my mind was getting to the movie theater, and at the movie theater they had printed out, do you remember this? They printed out and taped up signs everywhere.
Yes, I do.
That said something to the effect of, by the way, spoilers, if you haven't seen The Last Jedi, I recommend you watch it and then come
Where
back
are
and
you?
listen. It said something to the effect of, at I can't remember what time, at some point in the movie, it goes completely silent. There's nothing wrong with the sound at the theater. Everything is working as it should. Enjoy the movie.
Which, think about that for a second. We were one of the first audiences in all of North America to see it at that time.
Yep.
They preempted this. This is feedback that they got from other audiences, at least
yes.
public ones. So
Yeah.
there must have been something that happened in a private screening somewhere where people were like, "Hey, what happened to the sound? Turn it back
Screaming,
on."
throwing their popcorn at the booth. Yeah.
And they just sent an email to all theaters around the country. Just put a sign up, if you don't mind, so that you can avoid all the, well, I mean, they end up having to pick up a lot of popcorn anyway, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. That's funny that sticks out. I remember that as well. Another memory was we went out and had dinner right beforehand. And I think it was at Be Good was the name of the restaurant. Do you remember that? It was like the locally sourced foods and stuff. It was a
I think
great
it'd be
restaurant.
gone now.
I think it'd be gone now too. Oh, that was, wow, you are on fire with the dad
Ouch.
jokes.
Oh.
But ching.
Mm.
Yes, that I think it'd be gone now. But we did our little gift exchange, and I'm for the life of me trying to remember what you got me, but I remember what I got you.
What'd you get me? I don't know.
I got you the BB-8 Funko. It was your very first Funko.
Oh yeah, that's that. Yeah, I still have that one.
Do you remember what you got me?
I don't.
I don't either.
I don't.
I'm sorry. Did you get me?
I got you.
Oh,
I got you a brick, and I wrote "suck it" on a post-it note, and I taped it to the brick.
That's exactly what you did. And you just threw it at my face, and you're like, "Let's go watch Star Wars."
No, I got you
pay
something
for lunch
nice.
or pay for dinner, and then let's go.
I got you something nice. I don't remember what.
I want to say it was a book. Was it the visual dictionary, or was it the
Oh, it could have
art?
been. It could have been.
I want to say it might have even been the art of The Last Jedi.
Yeah, which
Was
is
it out yet?
I think it kind of came out like right as the movie came out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It's been 5 years, you know. I know what you got me for Force Awakens because I used it today. The umbrella, because the
Mm.
weather has been terrible today.
Oh, yes.
Hence why we were recording virtually. So yeah, that one was used today, being put to good use.
Nice. I can't believe you still have that. That's amazing.
Your microphone just went out
Oh,
again.
oh,
Check that.
oh.
Oh. While you're getting that all checked out, let's get into some things. We've got a lot to cover. We've already kind of started with our second segment at the beginning here. I'm assuming you're doing well, and I know we caught up before this, so I know you are. So how about we just jump into our first segment? Does that sound all right?
That sounds great. Do I sound all right?
No, you still got to fix that
Oh
microphone, man.
my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So while you're doing that, I will introduce, and it'll be really interesting to hear what this person in space sounds like. I'll introduce our first segment, news from across the galaxy. Oh,
How,
he's just gone.
how about now?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Can you do the jingle one more time then?
no, it's already done. I don't want to confuse our listeners.
It would be confusing. That's fair.
News from across the galaxy.
There we
I
go.
was just trying to catch you off guard. We've got some news today. There's
Yeah.
been a lot recently, right?
There's been a lot. There's a lot of kind of like stuff that's been building up for a while, things that we've been getting excited about that now we know the release dates and so on. But a lot of it is kind of building up for the 2023 tidal wave of new Star Wars stuff.
Yes. Yes. So one of those tidal waves is the Bad Batch that's next.
Mm-hmm.
We're all looking forward to that. I think it was January 4th we found out that it's coming. We got the season 2 trailer, I think, since the last time we spoke.
Yep.
And it looks fantastic. The
It's gonna be great.
animation looks top notch again. Omega looks a little older. Did you notice that?
I did.
I mean, the others don't age that much anymore. We're at
Nope.
that age where you just don't change much from year to year, but Omega definitely does.
Time is passing. Yep.
Yep. A little bit time has passed. A few things that stuck out for me from the trailer, and I'd be interested if anything stuck out for you. They tease like a heist for their freedom. From oh gosh, I'm forgetting her name, the Trandoshan woman.
I can't remember either, but
from the first season. Dang it.
our friends watching and listening will know who we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like there might be a big heist that's involved. Apparently, Wanda Sykes voices one of that character that's in that segment.
Yeah.
What else? Rex has another mission for them, so we're gonna get Rex back.
Cool.
There was talk about more defecting clones, which was interesting. So that should be an interesting storyline. And then you had oh my gosh, Crosshair. What's I think that, oh gosh, what's his name? I can see his face. Anyway, it talks about like them being traitors.
You think it? Oh, okay, got it.
No, it was yeah. Anyway, see, we need to go back and rewatch the first season of Bad Batch before we do this.
I guess so. That's okay. Yeah.
But my favorite, and I want to know if you caught this, was the Gungi is back. And for those who don't know who Gungi is, Gungi was in the first season, or it was in Clone Wars, and was the Wookiee Jedi.
Yeah.
And he's back, and he's got a lightsaber. That was kind of exciting, right?
Yes. So, and by the way, that came out right around the same time as there were. Are they leaked photographs of the Acolyte? Have you seen that?
Oh yes, there have been some leaked photos. You're right.
And there's a Wookiee Jedi.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of people are still reeling from. No spoilers. A lot of people love Buryaga.
Yes, no spoilers.
And so it was nice to see a couple other Wookiee Jedi like that. That's a whole branch of Star Wars movies, TV shows, and stories that I could really get into.
Yes, I'm excited for that. I kind of got really excited to see a Wookiee grab a lightsaber again.
Absolutely.
That's just always special. So yeah, that's something to look forward to. Is there anything else that stood out to you?
No, I think you hit all the main points there. So January 4th is not all that long away.
No, it's not. We will cover that. I think what we did last time was we covered as part of the news, just real quickly, like, hey, that was a great episode. Let's move on. And then we did like a full season recap. We're going to do that again because we want to get to some other topics before Mandalorian season 3 comes out. So
what's our next topic, by the way?
We usually tell people at the end. Let's tell them now to really get them excited for it. We're going to talk about a topic that is not broached very much in Star Wars. and that's death
or day-to-day life. I think
or
people
day-to-day life. We like to avoid it
so
for a lot of
Merry
good reasons.
Christmas, everybody. Happy Hanukkah. The next episode is going to be about death and dying in Star Wars.
But more specifically, just how it handles it. And
Yeah.
right, like it handles it a little bit differently than other franchises would handle it.
Yeah,
Right?
and there's different cultural examples of dealing with death and
Yeah.
different experiences of death rituals and funerals and stuff like that. Um,
Hey, I hate to say this, but I think we gotta cover Andor again when we talk about that, right?
oh, for sure, for
One of the
sure.
best funeral scenes.
Well, like the funeral scene in all of Star Wars, but
Exactly.
there's lots of there's lots of I think reflection on death and losing people
Yep.
and stuff like that. So that's going to be our Christmas episode. So everybody
Yes.
buckle up.
Yeah, that'll
Um,
be fun. Back to
but
the news.
back to the news. So another fun thing coming up. Lego recently announced some of its new Star Wars Lego sets coming up next year. And a few that stuck out to me, there's a smaller one, sort of a little bite-sized guy, and it's Boba Fett and his microfighter, which is his
Okay.
ship, but just really small, like just a little bit bigger than the little minifig guy.
I
Um,
just built the bigger one.
yeah, very cool. There's a TIE bomber that looks really, really
Oh,
cool.
okay.
Excited about that one.
Nice.
And then there's like a little mob of clone troopers,
Hmm.
which looks super cool. So, and these are all sort of like smaller, more affordable sets, which is great for everybody.
Mhm.
But like a little bit of a quicker build, a little bit smaller, maybe something that's like a little bit easier for younger folks. But just another cool wave of Star Wars Legos coming our way very soon.
I love a Star Wars Lego set. That's one of my favorites. That's
By the way,
exciting.
there's a an Instagram personality, a girl who is a big time Lego builder, and her thing is Star Wars, and she loves different Star Wars sets. And she had this thing, she had this run in like the end of November or so. Every day, her brother would be blindfolded, and she would throw a Star Wars Lego set at him, and he had to try to guess which one it was by the impact.
By the impact of it?
Yeah. So
Oh, that's terrible.
he couldn't see and he didn't know when it was coming, and then she'd throw it and it would smack him and he tried to guess and he was wrong every time.
Oh, yeah, because how are you telling it? Like, it just feels like you're
And
getting hit with a ton of bricks.
yeah, and I think
Literally.
if he would have gotten it right, it would have ended, but he never got it right. So
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, it was
Um,
good. It was good.
well, I hope his face is okay.
I hope he's okay. But
Um,
yeah, what else you got?
so, we got the Jedi Survivor trailer,
Yeah.
for the second, oh gosh, I'm blanking now on uh, what it's called.
Fallen Order.
Fallen Order, yes. Thank you. This is why I got you, man. Thank you. Um, and it's coming out March 17th. So we got a gameplay trailer with it. It looks fantastic. A little bit of tease
Is
around the
that St.
storyline.
Patrick's Day?
That would be St. Patrick's Day. Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So please don't drink that green beer or anything on that day. How about instead you go and buy Fallen Order?
Yes.
uh
Way better for you.
yes, I would agree. Um and yeah, so that's coming out. The only thing I'm disappointed in, and I knew this was gonna happen, it's not like this was a surprise at all because it's the era that we live in, not going to be released on Xbox One, not going to be released on PS4. It's all
I
going to be
know.
on the next gen consoles.
I
So
actually I meant to send you and Chris a message to confirm my understanding of that because I didn't want to
yeah,
believe it.
yeah,
And by the way, that I'm referring to, we have a group chat, a Broaxium group chat going, and sometimes I bounce stuff off of you guys. Mostly we send memes, but I just
memes.
I couldn't believe that it was just PS5.
Yeah, yeah. I could. It's been what, a year and a half since it's been released, almost 2
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
I don't even remember when it was. It was like holiday season, 2020 or 2021.
might have been 2020.
I think so.
And
Uh,
up until very recently, they were still really hard to get.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a it was just a matter of time. It was
Yeah,
about when they were going to make that decision. They've made it. So I got to decide if I'm getting one or not. I probably won't get one by March 17th. Is all I can say. That's it on my end. You got one more, I think, right?
I've got one more thing, and it's a happy
Big
celebratory
one.
thing. So we just wrapped up our kind of like step by step recap of Andor. So if you're a big fan of that show, like many people were, and you haven't listened to our Andor episodes, do go check them out. We really enjoyed talking about that. One of the things that really stood out was the quality of Diego Luna's performance. Like he kind of did it all. He had the whole evolution in his character. He played all these different sort of like action hero type angles on it. There was a lot of like deep, heartfelt stuff, and he just did a dynamite job. And so it was really exciting to see this week that Diego Luna was nominated for a Golden Globe Award for his lead actor role as Cassian Andor in the Andor series. And we don't have to wait that long to find out how he does because the Golden Globes are in January, just a few
That's
weeks
awesome.
away. Yeah.
It's so well deserved. And you know what? It's very ironic that he got that because we've talked about this. It's his show, but he's not the only character. It's not like it revolves around him. It's kind of
No, it's
the story
ensemble.
happens to him a lot of times, and it's a lot of people's stories. It's just as much Mon Mothma's story, I would say. Um, but he was
Totally
just
agree.
fantastic in it.
Yeah.
And he drove it. Let's just be clear. Like he did drive it. It was all about how the rebellion forms, but how it forms kind of around him and from
Yeah.
his perspective. So
And how he incorporates these different perspectives of the people he meets, of the Nemeks and then his
mhm.
mom and so on. And but if you want to hear us opine more on that, go back and check out those episodes. But I'm excited. I feel like that's really well deserved. I think he seems like a really good guy too when you see him interacting with fans and stuff like that. So you always
Yeah,
like to see those guys get the recognition too. But
totally agree.
bunch of good news, bunch of happy stuff. Excited
I got
for
one more. I just realized that I should have mentioned. And it's a bit of two parts together in terms of news. Um, Willow is out. That's a Lucasfilm property. It's not Star Wars. I know it's not Star
yeah.
Wars for news.
Yeah.
But it is out. And as part of that news, you can find me on the
You?
CWK podcast. Me, yes, the Coffee with Kenobi podcast with Dan Zare
One of my favorites.
and Ross Olivan, who runs Fantha Tracks. Go check it out. We talk about episode 3 of the Willow series. I'm enjoying it so far. I still got to sit down and watch Willow 4. I'll probably do that either tonight, tomorrow, something. And I'm enjoying it. It's not, uh, it's not like what you expect out of Star Wars. It's not the same. Just because Lucasfilm made it doesn't mean it's the exact same thing. It's much more of a coming of age fantasy kind of thing.
Mm,
I I feel like I get Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter vibes as I watch A Princess
yeah, I
Bride.
get some of
So
that.
it's very different. So have you gotten the chance to start it yet?
I saw the first 2 episodes
You
and
did. Okay.
yeah, and really enjoyed them, and Warwick Davies, always like him, happy to see him in anything. Didn't realize that his daughter is in it.
Yes.
That's really cool.
That's
But
special, right?
yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't realize it was a Lucasfilm property until it came up on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And then I finally connected the dots because I hadn't watched it in so long. But very cool fantasy story. I'm into it.
Yes. Yeah. So check it out. I think it's
But
getting mixed reviews as everything, but
it's super cool that you got to be on with those guys. Like,
it was a pleasure. It was a blast. I've been going to the live session for quite a while with CWK Live, uh, and listening to the podcast and everything. I've really just enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun participating in that, and so to be on it was an absolute honor. So maybe one of other times to come. But if you are looking for another one that you like, another good Star Wars podcast, make sure to go and support them.
yeah, it's terrific.
That's all I
Cool.
got. I'm done. Sorry.
No problem. Shall we get into the main part of the show?
Shall we?
We shall.
Okay. Should we do this?
Let's do it. And
No
I'll
turning back now?
nope. We're going one way. We're not going back. And this part is called More to the Story.
Dun, 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 dun.
And where do we start?
I don't know.
Where do we begin with Last Jedi?
There's so many places you could begin with this. Here's what we are going to talk about. We've already talked about our experience, kind of leading up to it. We're going to give it our review. We've been putting this off for a while. I've wanted to cover this topic since we started this podcast, but it just didn't feel right until we got to the 5th anniversary and kind of had a reason to bring it up. But we'll talk about some of our favorite parts in it. We'll talk about uh, you know how we've interpreted it, how it's kind of stood the test of time, and get to some of the controversies at the end. And to be completely upfront about it, look, if you didn't like it, please listen in. If you loved it, please listen in. Like we're not gonna, you know, we'll take our side on it, but we're not gonna make you feel bad for whatever side you're on. So
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
make this as fair and equitable as possible.
Yeah. And one of the things I was thinking about when we were preparing for the episode was some of the scenes in the movie are very much left open to interpretation. And your interpretation, your opinion of what you're seeing is a unique experience and it's a valid one.
Yeah.
When you watch certain interactions between Luke and Rey, certain things that just seem to be happening to Rey, we can dig into some of the specific ones, but I think Ryan Johnson very deliberately did not say, here's what that means.
Yeah.
This is the right answer.
Yeah.
And I think you zoom out, you look at the whole movie, that's the case. That's the same thing is true. There's
Yeah.
no right answer.
There's no
Your
right answer.
interpretation is valid.
Go
If you
ahead.
didn't like it, that's fair.
Yeah.
If you love it, if it's in your top 2 or whatever, that's fair.
Yeah. It's all fair.
It's all fair. And
Well, maybe not all. There were some reactions that were a bit over the top, but we can
yeah,
get like
we
like chasing the uh chasing some of the actors off social media. No, not fair. That's not a good thing to do. Um so there, we can draw the lines at certain places, but like in terms of your opinion of if you like this or not, you know, there's been so much dialogue. I think there's some of it that is fair, and we'll get to some of those exact examples later. The one thing that kind of always disappointed me a little bit was that if you did fall on the side that loved it
Mhm.
and fought for that love, your love of it, uh, kudos to you. But I feel like it brought it down in some people's eyes if they loved it and had a really positive reaction to start. All the discourse that followed was not positive enough for them to kind of keep it in that same um, atmosphere, which I always found a little bit disappointing for those fans that really wanted to love it.
Yeah, and I feel bad some people kind of went into hiding with, not wanting to
Yes,
engage on message boards on social media, not wanting to talk about a movie that they really liked because they worried about kind of getting steamrolled
what the
with
backlash would be.
with
Yeah.
the trolls and the backlash and all that sad stuff. And I've mentioned before that generally speaking, we have a really nice interaction with people online, whether it's our Twitter or whatever it might be. The only times where I've had people be really unkind was when we've tweeted or written comments or in any way
Mm.
been kind about The Last Jedi
You mean on social media?
on social
People were
media. Can you
unkind,
believe it? Can you
hiding
believe that
behind their anonymity? Come on, that doesn't happen.
it happened? It was shocking at some points how much people wanted us to be wrong and feel bad about having the opinion that we enjoyed the movie. And
It all these years later too, by the way, right? It's not even that they felt that way. It was how long that people have been harboring some of these emotions.
right, let it go.
Look,
That's
we
too
all
much.
need to let it
Yeah,
go
yeah, it's
on
too
all
much.
sides.
Totally, it's a lot to be carrying around for 5 years straight.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but I think I think there's an interesting parallel here. I don't know. Maybe we're jumping into it. A few years ago, I read a book by a guy named William Dereshowitz where he was a English professor, and he wrote about how he only liked like really snooty kind of like high art type books,
Okay.
and how one of his friends wanted him to read Pride and Prejudice and some other Jane Austen books,
Okay.
which are sometimes considered chick lit from the 1800s.
Okay.
And so he's
Not
like, I'm not.
today, right?
I not so much today,
Yeah.
but back then it was something. It was like the romance novels, like um, not the typical stuff that dudes would read. And
Sure.
and he said that he was reading something, and he realized like, oh wow, this is like actually really entertaining, and it's well written, and it's kind of cool, and I'm a little bit embarrassed that I'm reading it and whatever. And he said one of the characters in one of the Jane Austen books was really pretentious and kind of like snooty and like too good for everybody and whatever. And he said he felt like it was kind of like holding up the book was like holding up a mirror to him of
Mm,
like, you're so snooty and pretentious, you almost didn't enjoy this book, just like this
mm,
character in the book.
mhm,
And how when he let go of a lot of that, then he was really able to enjoy it. And that
mm,
came to mind for me when there's a scene in the movie, and I don't know, maybe we'll jump around here a little bit, but Luke is talking to Rey, and he's talking about the Force, and he's talking about how it doesn't belong to the Jedi,
right.
and how vain that is almost to assume that, oh, only the Jedi know the way, and only it's the only way that you should be interacting with the Force is as a Jedi, and so on. And for me, it was almost like, but that's kind of holding up a mirror to some of the haters of the sequel trilogy and of this movie, who are like, this is the only way. And
Mm,
here's one of the characters of the whole saga telling you that's not right. Yes, there's merit to it, but you can't just hold on to that thing for dear life and say this is the only way. It can't be any other way. Like we're the only ones who have access. Luke is only supposed to be one way, and
yeah.
and for me that was kind of a moment of like, oh gosh, like this was sort of the rebirth of this the story through the sequel trilogy of there's a lot of new opportunity here and things are going to change, and this is not the trilogy that I grew up with, and to me it felt like evolution, and for a lot of, I know for
Mm.
some people it felt like you're killing my childhood hero.
Well, I think it's important to let's talk about the Luke piece a bit, because there's a lot of we'll get to some of that controversy that surrounded the interpretation of his character, and there's a lot of things that Mark Hamill specifically said about how at first he wasn't on board with the
At
interpretation
first,
at first.
and
Well,
that quote gets
eh,
cut off a lot.
no, he said at first, and then there were more comments. Like there's been a lot of discourse and people spinning things out of proportion. Whatever, um, but I think what was really clear to me about the story that Ryan Johnson was trying to tell in this movie was that this is a story about a lot of our heroes, and in Luke's case specifically, what happens when the hero loses their way and how he lost his way. And if you put yourself into his shoes, right? He's had to carry the mantle of being the hero for a long time, for being the one that the kid on the farm, the unassuming kid who just days prior was complaining about how he couldn't hang out with his friends, is thrust into the hero role, destroys the Death Star, and everybody in the galaxy knows who he is. That's a
Hmm.
huge turnaround. And to not think like what is the psychological impact to somebody when that happens? And
Yeah.
like he went through that. He took on that mantle and he had to deal with some really heavy stuff like the reveal of his father and then the subsequent death of his father and
Yep.
all and then starting up the Jedi Order and being alone, being the sole Jedi in the entire galaxy basically and trying to recreate them. And that's what this is about. It is all right. He's lost all that. He is literally now the last Jedi. And I mean, at the end, he says, "I will not be the last Jedi," but like, well, that's later. Um, and what does that do to him? Not to mention how his psyche is impacted by everything that's happened with Ben Solo, and like he talks about Leia when he chokes up when he says her name, like I have betrayed her. He feels such deep shame, so deep that when he's talking to Rey about the event, he leaves out a key detail about why he confronted him and that he was the first one to ignite his lightsaber. He leaves that out
Mm.
because he's feeling shameful about it. This is the story of how a hero has lost his way and how he comes back to become the hero again in one last heroic effort. If we look at it through that lens, I think it's the beautiful, awesome story. But to your earlier point about what Ryan Johnson was trying to achieve, he was trying to let you kind of interpret and figure out those things for yourselves. He didn't want to just tell you all that up front. He wanted you to figure that out. And I don't think everyone has gone as far to figure that out. And maybe that's where some of the controversy comes from.
Mm. Yeah.
Here's the soapbox back. I'm done.
That's okay. I think we're going to be trading the soapbox back and
We
forth a little
will.
bit tonight.
But is that
Um,
fair? Do you agree with that? Do you think that's like
I think that's fair. Like my opening statements were, along the lines of every interpretation I feel like is unique, and that people experience the movie differently, and it's totally valid. And I
Yeah.
think Ryan Johnson wants that. I think he doesn't want to tell you it's this. I think he wants you to kind of feel your way through it and have an experience. And that was so mine aligns a bunch with yours, and I think in some other ways it's a little bit different, but that feels right. I think it's also a little bit of like the journey inward. You take Luke away from the rest of the galaxy and put him on a deserted island. He really kind of goes inward with that shame, with that guilt,
Mhm. It
with
builds.
it builds, and he's just sort of in his head, and he's sort of just going, kind of closing himself off literally from the force and just going inward. And I think he meets Ray, who is similarly on a journey inwards, but hers is not because of something that happened. Not quite as much. She's trying to kind of figure out, well, who am I? What,
Yeah.
like, who are my people?
And hopefully this guy Luke that I've been hearing stories all about is the guy to help me out.
Yeah, and he can give me an identity maybe,
Yeah.
and maybe he can find my even though he's sort of lost. Maybe these two lost souls can kind of help each other find their way, but both of them have to take some kind of journey inward and figure something out for themselves and
Yeah.
reconcile something painful and fill in some blanks in Ray's case of like, who am I? Where did I come from? What does that mean for me and my future and so on. Um, and so when Luke offers to train her, I think he's giving her a massive opportunity, and then he's helping her, you know, take on some type of identity that is uniquely hers.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that, and we're jumping around all over the place. It's interesting how quickly she sort of connects with the dark side, and how that starts to creep in and things like that. But there's a lot of
Which
uncertainty.
stokes Luke's fear up again,
Yeah.
right? Like, because he's already dealt with this once before and doesn't want to deal with it again. It's part of the reason why he doesn't want to train her. He doesn't believe in himself to be able to train her. But when he sees that she could go down the same path his last Padawan went down,
Hmm.
he's scared.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably traumatized from that experience. That's the type of thing that sticks with you, and so
Yeah.
here it comes again potentially. But um, here's another thing. Before maybe we go down that path too far, here's another thing that's interesting. I think about movies, books, stories where there's a lot of room for interpretation. Is I think at different points in your life, you go and you revisit them, and you maybe see them a little bit differently and experience them a little bit differently. And I
Yeah.
feel like I had a very different experience in like one specific before and after. And
How
I
so? You got a couple examples maybe?
yeah, I
Because I did too.
for one thing, I'll just say very quickly, I think this is probably the Star Wars movie I've watched the most over the last few
Oh,
years.
okay. Oh, just the last few years, not ever.
Not ever.
Okay.
Just like since I've owned a copy of it, since I've had Disney, I think it's the one I've watched the most. I'm not
Okay.
sure. I haven't kept track, but it
Okay.
feels like it's the one I've thrown on the most. And I have a different experience watching it now post lockdown, post pandemic
Oh, related to that. Interesting. Okay.
than I did before. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think for me, I think it's that journey inward thing. I think the idea of Luke being on a deserted island, like
Mhm.
he was the galaxy's social distancing champion. There were memes to that effect.
Social distancing before it was cool.
Before it was cool, but yeah, I mean, like, so the lockdown was a hard time for a lot of people. It was kind of a heavy time, and um, people
Can I
lived.
can I
Go
say
ahead.
something on that real quick?
Sure.
Um, the the one thing that I really think is interesting is because of all the shame that I mentioned that he was experiencing is that yes, he does go to this remote island and he cuts himself off from the world. But then for an added measure, he cuts himself off from the force. And he
Mm,
does that specifically because he knows that there are some people who could reach out to him through the force. So he decides, I don't want that to happen.
yeah.
Cut myself off. Um, and I find it very interesting that the very moment he connects to the force again, who responds? His sister, Leia. And I think that's deliberate. I think she she didn't pursue the path of the Jedi, but I don't. We know she didn't lose touch with the Force, and I wonder if she
No, we
kind of
see that in the movie. Yeah.
we see that a few times, and I wonder if she made sure to never let go of it, so that the day that he did reconnect with the Force, she could reach out to him.
Oh gosh, that's a really good point. So that's a
She was
totally
unconscious and she did it.
that's a totally different version of like they're both they've both got their sort of like obsessive behavior of like no, Luke is cut off from everybody, he's not letting anybody in, and meanwhile she's reaching out constantly with hope.
Yes.
But
It's
also like
like,
that can be really painful, like that longing of like, oh my gosh, like will I ever, find my person?
yeah, she's basically set the equivalent of a camera up in the middle of the forest and set it
Field
to take
cam, a
a
trail
picture as
cam.
soon as exactly, a trail cam. Like, as soon as something crosses its path, take a picture of it. Like,
And
that's
he's
what
put on
she's
extra
done.
camouflage.
Exactly. He knows where it is and he won't pass by it.
We're in
Just like
Pennsylvania.
that. Yeah, but not Pennsylvania.
We're not in
Um,
Pennsylvania, you're right.
uh, I wonder if people in Pennsylvania find that offensive.
Maybe. I hope not. We
I
say it
hope
with
not.
love.
If totally do. I love that area, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
But
cut
so
you
yeah,
off.
so I've had a different experience kind of after the whole pandemic, after being in lockdown for a while,
Interesting.
and all the heavy stuff that went with that. Watching the scenes where Luke is on Octu and Rey's trying to kind of get him to come out and reintegrate back into the world, as many of us have had to do, like in the last year or
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
and how painful that potentially is. And it's so painful for Luke, he basically dies. um,
Mhm.
but yeah, there's just like a lot of, I think,
Are you gonna
uh,
be laughing about death at our next episode, by the way?
no, that is serious.
Yes. No laughter now.
Um, there's probably going to be some dark humor in the next episode, I'm assuming.
Probably.
But yeah, but that all that makes me think, okay, in another 5 years, depending on what's happening in my life or happening in the world, I might see The Last Jedi differently. I might get something different out of watching it.
Yeah.
And to me, like that's a really cool experience. Like that's a really cool way to think, wow, this movie has some real staying power. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Thinking back to 2017 versus 2022, uh, are there different experiences that you have watching this movie? Are there different feels that you get?
Not necessarily different feels. I'll say, like, one of the things that I've always, like I mentioned, I struggle with is, uh, I know all the criticism that's out there, and people have found everything to nitpick about with it. I remember someone telling me that they can't even watch the throne room scene, the fight in the throne room, and I went, "That's the best part. Don't ruin that for me. Don't ruin from that part for
It's
me." Like,
amazing. It's
it's
amazing.
amazing, and
Well,
they're like,
that's
"Oh,
my
but."
opinion. It's my
Yeah,
opinion.
yes, yeah. But I loved it. I was so, like, just goosebumps, like, over the moon watching that. Like, I'll put that scene on repeat, and get that feeling again every time. And someone's like, "Oh yeah, the choreography is terrible. If you watch it, looks like they don't know what they're doing." I'm like, and now
Uh,
I can't watch it without thinking about that criticism. So I struggle with that, on a lot of watches. I was hoping I wouldn't this time around, but I was.
hmm.
And I think that's unfortunate, and I'm hoping that is like, I'll say this though. When I wasn't thinking about it from a podcasting perspective, the last time I watched it, which I think was actually the end of last year with my father-in-law,
Mm.
and he hadn't seen it for the first time, I had a completely different experience because I was
Mm.
watching it very fresh. I was just enjoying it casually, just having a good time, wondering what he was thinking. And we got to the end of it. He's like, I don't, I was surprised he said this. Like, he's like, I don't remember any of that. I don't know how I missed that movie. That was phenomenal.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Casual fan who 4 years later to finally decide to sit down and watch it, like, unencumbered by all the discourse around it,
Isn't that nice?
and that was his reaction.
Very cool.
What a pure way to react, and I wish I could just bottle it up, and, like,
Yeah.
that's what so many people I remember experienced when they walked out of the theater. I talked to people at work who were like, "What do you think of it?" One conversation particularly, he goes, "Top 2 movies almost all time, at least in Star Wars, though." And I went,
Hmm.
"That's kinda where I feel, that was just that good." It's not that's high on my list now, but that's not with a few rewatches. That's just like, okay, where do I finally feel this shook out?
Yeah.
But that was the reaction people were having on out of the
That
gates.
that's super cool. Um, let's talk a little bit about like
The
that
actual
throne.
movie?
Oh yeah, let's talk about the movie a little bit.
Yeah,
But maybe let's talk about some of the qualities of the movie very quickly.
sure.
I went back and I looked at what was this nominated for, if anything, and it really, and I was surprised by this because maybe because I've only seen it in the theater, I think a couple of times, and I don't have like a serious like home theater setup, so I'm missing out on something. A lot of sound nominations and wins.
Mm.
Best sound editing, best sound effects, etc.
How
Um,
much of that was because of the light speed maneuver scene,
probably a meaningful part of it, but
right? Like the
there,
absence of sound?
yeah, the absence of sound. Um, so that was kind of cool. I didn't pick up on that, but a lot of people really loved the visuals. A lot of people thought of this as like a visually stunning movie. The way that Ryan Johnson used color, the
Mm,
way that he plays with light, the just kind of like the tone or texture of like the like the way the people's skin looks, like things like that. Like it has a very distinct look. It doesn't look like
it
the movie
does.
before it or after it. It
It
really
does.
stands out. And
I
so
agree.
some people did not like that. But some people said, "Gosh, it looked beautiful. I just hated the story."
I've
So,
heard very few people say that they don't like the way it looked. Like they talk about how it's one of the most visually stunning movies, and they'll never back off of that. Like that's like the one thing they do give it.
yeah. So, yeah, I think I agree. I think I've seen a lot of people who will give it that, or a lot of people who say, "Yes, this is something that's special about it, plus all this other stuff." But um, so I think there's a wonderful score. Loved the score.
Hmm.
Drove around listening to it for weeks and weeks and weeks when I got my hands on it.
I'd listen to the throne room scene just to get the goosebumps again and picture it in my mind again
Oh
before I
wow,
could
just like
like own the
when you're
movie.
getting ready for work in the morning or something.
Maybe not that way, but like just randomly like, oh, I need to listen to that. Well, it
Yeah,
was like on my mind in the car or something. Yeah.
yeah. So I think sound, the visual experience, and another thing that I just thought was really done very well visually was uh, the tree, the the
Hmm.
the tree burning, Yoda appearing, all that stuff. Like
Hmm.
like it has a very specific look and feel that just makes it stand out from all the other movies. So
Yeah.
you've got all that going for it. It's instantly recognizable. Like if there's a scene from it up on the screen, like most people don't have to go, which one is this? Which
Yeah.
Star Wars movie? Like you instantly know. Um, but I think where I heard the most criticism from early on was stuff about the story. I don't like the story. I don't like this twist. I don't like this character arc, whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe we
And
can dig into that.
let's do that. And I think it's important to remember like this is a three-act play, like all things really are. Um Act one, if there's any criticism, a lot of what falls apart for people is in act one. There are They're just moments that don't click for people, and it's a very long act. It takes up the majority of the
Hmm.
movie. It's over an hour at least, it feels in some ways. I kind of feel like act one ends as soon as Ray leaves the planet. That's kind of when it ends for me. And you think of like that happens well over an hour into the movie. It's a
Yeah.
long movie. Um, there's a lot that happens in there where the controversy starts, and if you get lost there, and frankly, there are some plot holes. But if you get lost there, you're going to struggle through the act two and three, where frankly, it's almost immaculate
Yeah.
how well
Yeah.
those two acts come together. But I think it's act one. Um, one of the, and frankly, there's a couple of things that don't work for me, and a couple of them were one Hux's first line. I heard it and I felt it was. He says, "I have direct orders from Supreme Leader Snoke himself." It always felt a little forced in that moment, and so but is it gonna pull me out of it? No. But it was like the one thing, and then as soon as he delivers the line after that, and he gets into the joke about his mom, and with Poe calling it, like
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
back into it. I'm loving this. I'm
Yeah.
laughing.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
having a good time. So small thing, move past it. The other one was also in Act One when Poe is like, he goes they're having the conversation, Finn, Poe, and Rose trying to figure out like what do we do, they can track us through light speed. we can't get in unless we have like a someone who can break codes.
The code
And
breaker, yeah.
Poe, the code breaker, right? And then Poe is like, he's got an idea, and it cuts to Maz Kanata. And thought I had was, wait, how does he know Maz? There's got to be some connection in the back. Like they know, like, how did he make that connection to her? It's so small, but like
It's
that's like
fun.
the only thing I go, I don't know. That's
It's
it.
funny. It's funny you mention that because there's something in that scene that takes me out of the movie a little bit.
What's that?
Maz is in a shootout with because of the union dispute or
Yes.
whatever. But whatever, the camera is just on her face the whole time.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And you're like, what? I
And
think I
I'm
know where you're
wondering,
going.
like, is she doing like a selfie the whole time? Or like how does that work? Is something following her around? Does she have like a GoPro? Like
No. You know what she has?
what?
She has Lola.
Lola's floating around and
She
just
has a little Lola.
maybe.
You can make it work,
But
right?
it's one of those it's one of those things where people will pick something small from a space opera movie and go, that doesn't work for me. And it's like the
Yeah.
aliens do, the light swords do, the like everything else is fine. All of a sudden this doesn't work. And like I do that back to myself too. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I can't let this take me out of it.
Like I said, the little plot holes that and enough can pull you out. I can understand that. But again,
Yeah.
we're kind of going into like the things that we it sounds like we're being critical. We're just kind of identifying these things, but gosh, there are moments in this. I already mentioned a few. Let me tell you this.
Mm.
Um, did you know, or if you think about it, The Last Jedi, it does something that it only has in common with episodes 3 and 4. Any idea what it is?
I'm thinking.
For the sake of our listeners, I'll start giving it to you.
Yeah, please.
They're like, it went silent. What happened? It starts with immediate action. It like you
Mm.
go right into the war. And
Yeah.
I kind of like that. That's one of my favorite things about episode 3, where you got that drum beat and you start kind of
Yes.
going in, flying in with are those A-wings, I think?
Yeah.
Flying in with those two, with Obi-Wan and Anakin, and it's all quiet, and then they go on the other side of the Star Destroyer, basically. I can't remember what it's called, but and there's just a huge battle going on above Coruscant.
Yep.
So cool. That's almost what happens in this.
Yeah.
Just join right in the middle of the action, right in the middle of the evacuation, and it's like you are thrust into it. That really works for me, and I love that.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. You're right. I think we've touched on a couple of things that caused us to at least pause for a second and ask some questions. But I really liked so that Hux line didn't stop me. For example, I really liked out of the gate the action that we got, and just the whole mini story that we got with the bomber and the
Yeah.
dreadnought,
And
um,
Paige.
and Paige and that whole
Mhm.
thing and that sacrifice right off the bat. Um, and then we come back to it later, and Leia and others are perhaps upset about Poe's brashness and him,
Yeah.
getting some people killed and so on. So like it's a consequential big opening sequence with a lot of action, and yeah, it's interesting to see the rebellion that doesn't have a whole lot of resources, people, and so on, making big brash moves right out of the first few minutes of the movie. So I like
Yeah.
how it starts. I
Yeah,
like
and go ahead.
I like jumping into the action, and I kind of going back to what I was saying before, the visuals, the music, the sound, the light and all that stuff. Like it's just also, I think, one of the prettier battle scenes, honestly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that the episode 3 was probably one of my the prettier, like, 'cause there's just a
That's
lot of
number
color.
one for me. That's number
Right?
one for me.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, that's fair. Maybe followed by Crate, with it's just white and red, but it's so cool, like, the going through the caves and
Yeah.
I
And and
love that.
and that's one I think too that they used pretty significantly in the lead up in terms of like the billboard art,
Marketing.
the
Mhm.
marketing, the posters. I remember being in Orlando, Florida, just before the movie came out, and being somewhere near Disney and seeing a gigantic crate scene billboard and
Yeah.
just being like stunned by it. Just
Yeah.
how cool the contrast of the red and the sand and so on. So
Yeah.
a lot of the action is not just like gratuitous action. Like you take a picture and it's just visually stunning.
Yeah.
And something special about that. It's very cool.
Yeah. I totally agree. I want to ask you a question about the humor because I've already
Sure.
mentioned one of the lines that still works for me. And that's the whole, I want to talk to Hux about his mom, like that whole scene. Um, One of the other, and this was a big controversy, was Luke throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder.
Remember the
Where,
buildup
mm-hmm,
of that was
mm-hmm.
like a couple of years, people waiting to see what would happen.
What would he say? What would be his first words? We speculated, and remember, speculation was what did this in for a lot of people.
Yes.
The
Yeah,
over
yeah, yeah.
speculation. We
Yep.
speculated about what would he say, what would happen, and when he threw that lightsaber over, so we all went, that was not on anybody's list.
Mm-mm.
Um, I watch it now. I laughed in the theaters. I was like, that's funny. What's going on? But when I watched it this time, I didn't laugh anymore. And it isn't
Mm.
because I didn't think it was funny anymore. I got that it was played for humor, and it doesn't mean that it didn't work for me. Um, I I just kind of thought about it as you know, I guess confused. I was confused is what I was like, wait, why did he just do that? I felt what Ray felt, this confusion. And
I
I
was
think
just about to say that. Yes.
yeah, a lot of people then said, "Oh, well, now I'm mad about that." And confusion can cause anger, but I was just more like, huh, perplexed. And like, I know how it's
Mhm.
going to end, but like, that confusion is more the feeling I get with it now, which is maybe a factor of not having to wait 2 years to see it anymore. You know? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there.
I
But did
I
you, humor wise, was there anything that like was still really funny or just didn't work for you?
not that didn't work for me. And that was something that I think again took some people out of the movie as some things might, but I liked it.
I loved it.
I thought it worked well. I liked like when we first run into Luke, like things are pretty bleak and kind of dark, and you feel bad for him, and you're like, where's the Luke Skywalker we grew up with? And so I'm thinking when Luke and Ray have that confrontation, she finds the ancient Jedi texts,
Hmm.
and he's like, "Who are you?" And they have this whole dialogue,
Yeah.
and she said, "I'm from nowhere." And he's like, "Nobody's from nowhere." And she
I'm
says
from
she's from Jakku, and
Jakku.
he's like, "Yeah, it's pretty much nowhere."
Yeah.
Like
That's still funny.
it's still funny. It's still funny, and it felt good to see Luke crack a joke because it seems like he's not in a great spot, and so to see like some of his personality come through, and um, there's like a youthfulness to like joking around and stuff like that. See that come back, like I love that. Like it made me feel it was a nice lighthearted moment that made me feel like we were reconnecting to the original character that we really loved from the prior movies. But so
Agreed.
it didn't take me out as much. That the whole thing with Poe and Hux is basically a prank call,
Yeah.
you know? Um,
Yes.
and I think I think any civilization with any means of communication will at some point devolve into pranking. So
Right?
why not?
Right.
And it felt very Poe.
Yeah.
So that didn't bug me at all. But I remember like the first night we saw it again, December 14th, the Thursday sneak preview, there was like a little bit of tension when there's some joking.
There was
Like,
tension in a lot of stuff, yes, and there was trepidation, as I feel
yeah,
what I would classify it as, because maybe we just started hearing a few things out there, but we heard like we started hearing the polarized reactions to it, and so we
yeah.
just didn't know what to walk in with. And I think on our it was like I couldn't tell what side of the theater we were on, but I felt like I was on the side of the theater maybe because I heard my own laughter, but we were on the side that like enjoyed it a little bit more, you know?
I
Um,
think I think by and large people did.
yeah,
But there were some things that felt like maybe a little bit different or out of character where it's hard to explain, but you can kind of feel people in the room tense up a little bit, not laugh. And
Yeah, yeah.
when it's a
Which is
sold
tough.
out theater and you're shoulder to shoulder with people next to you, like you pick up on that a little bit. And so some of the funny moments, I was surprised people weren't laughing, but they were instead sort of clenching up a little bit. Um, but no,
Can
I,
I
I I liked a lot of that stuff.
Okay, that's awesome. Let let's let me ask you another thing. Well, and kind of share kind of one of the things I really like too. I really like how every movie, and it starts with Empire Strikes Back. Every movie kind of makes an attempt to explain what the Force is and talk
Mm,
about it in a certain way. Even the Obi-Wan series that we got just recently, right? There's the whole dialogue between Obi-Wan and Leia about how the Force is like a light,
yeah.
and how do you feel when it's dark and the light goes on, like it's peace, like different ways of describing it. Ryan decided to take this great allegory, almost, or a great, maybe that's not the right word, but analogy. He focused on the balance of the Force, and the whole movie really is about balance. um Powerful light, powerful dark, as Luke says. And you had that the whole Ray kind of going through what she sees, and she sees, she saw both life and then death, and then peace and then violence, and the juxtaposition of those words, and like in the middle of it all was balance. And
Hmm.
um I that to me was, I think it was a beautiful scene. I love the way it was filmed and showed all those different kind of montages put stitched together. Um but it kind of it just really works for me. Any reactions to that? Any thoughts on just the way the Force is kind of described?
Yeah, I like the different take on it from some of the other stuff we'd seen, and I like the last few years how we've been getting, like you mentioned, Kenobi. Definitely in the High Republic, we're getting different takes on what the experience of the Force is like,
That
and
exactly.
again, I think it's an individualized thing, and I think these different takes are all valid. And I think it's just one more reminder of like the unique experience of like what people have when they watch this. But I think it's also like, people talk about how the Last Jedi is kind of cut off from the rest of the saga, and they had to fix it and all that stuff later on, which I think is nonsense. But it's also foreshadowing who Rey is ultimately in the
Hmm.
story.
Right.
That the Rey that we know up until this point is lovely and good hearted and kind and mission oriented and so on, but that's not what we find out to be her origin story. And so there is this tension within her. And I think what's kind of playing out outside of her Kylo kind of being pulled together as these supposedly polar opposite sides of the Force. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's really more like the throne room scene where it's like, no, there's these two sides inside of Rey, and
Yes.
that
Yes.
darkness is potentially going to win over, or maybe the light is potentially going to win over. And it scares Luke a little bit to see that darkness um, because of all the different things that you mentioned. But
Yeah.
it's all available within her right now, and it's sort of being brought to the surface to sort itself out. So,
So it's interesting that you say that, because one of the I wrote down in two different instances, because there is that whole criticism of the Rise of Skywalker trying to fix the Last Jedi, and you talked about that, and one of the things was like Rey's lineage. And there were a few instances where I was like, you can really easily tie this back to Palpatine. Um, and one of them was when she finally comes clean and she's like,
wait,
something
did you
inside
think
me.
that? Did you think that before Rise of Skywalker?
No, uh, no, I
Okay,
didn't.
okay,
No, no, I
I would.
didn't.
Okay, I would have been pressed.
No, as I was watching this time is when I was like, oh yeah, this
Gotcha,
works.
gotcha. Okay, sorry.
And one of them was where she's like, something inside me is awake, and I'm afraid. She says,
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid. That's a characteristic of the dark side. I almost felt like it was Palpatine, doing his thing, kind of stoking that fear within her, letting it finally awaken within her, so that
Yes.
he can start realizing his dastardly plan. That worked for me, and that's
Yeah.
where my mind went. Another one was in the scene I just mentioned. where uh she's talking about the she sees and the balance and everything, and all of a sudden she sees the darkness and how it's offering her something and it's calling to her, and now she's not resisting. Palpatine came to mind again. It's like just stoking that flame a little bit, trying
Hmm.
to get the dark side in her to awaken. Um and yeah, the just I guess I was just finding little connections to how it worked and tied in well with Rise of Skywalker and where we eventually go with her
Yeah,
lineage.
and it does work. But yeah, I like the whole balance thing. I like the visuals with the tile work on the floor. Um, even the island itself feels like it's like the physical embodiment of, like, on the surface it seems like green and serene and
Yeah,
alive, and then you sort of dig into it, and underneath the surface there's this darkness brewing, and um,
yeah.
so uh, liked all that stuff. Um, hey, talk to me about some of what we see later on in the movie with Luke
You mean where he comes back?
when he comes back. Yeah,
When he on crate?
on Crate.
That sounds like a good place to go next. Um, yeah, the whole scene with him, yeah, coming back, the timing of it to me was the most important.
Mm,
They had just fought with the very few that remain, and that's the hard part about watching this. You're just like watching the rebellion getting picked off one by one, their last resources slowly just diminishing and depleting
yeah,
until they have nearly nothing left. They go out there with 13 skid steers, and then there's a bunch of people that are also shooting from the barracks, but there's not much of a rebellion left. And then nobody responds. It's like your hope is just going down the whole movie, and all of a sudden it reaches rock bottom, and who walks in but Luke? The timing of it was perfect. The
hmm
beautiful scene with him and Leia was perfect. He walks out and confronts Kylo Ren, and you're just confused the whole time. What is happening? He's letting himself be shot at.
hmm
He's confronting him. What is happening? And then eventually,
and and
it's
by and
revealed.
and by the way, before we get to that,
Yeah.
um, something that struck me odd the first time I watched that was Leia's reaction to him.
Mhm.
It's very tender, but it's also very distant,
Okay.
and
Explain.
in the sense that you like, why wouldn't these siblings who hadn't seen each other in a long time, like, do that Hollywood thing where they hug and he sort of picks her up and they spin around and her feet are off the ground and whatever. Um,
They're old now. They can't do that.
well, yeah, I guess that's fair.
No, just
Um,
kidding.
but
You can still give each other a hug. I know.
a hug or something, and I think the connection with them was sort of reestablished, and I think Leia knew what he was doing,
Mhm.
and I think Leia was almost like an accomplice in that plan at that point.
Well, and maybe like he didn't want to. He's still feeling some of that shame or something, and
It could be some
like
of that.
then there's just the practical reason of like, hey, we don't want the audience knowing
I
that he's an
Right,
aberration, right?
right,
Um, that's
definitely, but yeah, it
it's
made
true
me
though.
wonder of, like, wow, it seems like Leia has some awareness of what's going on here, and she's sort of in on it.
I think she kind of realizes when he hands over the dice, and she realizes one, oh, this is reminding me of Han, and then
Yeah,
two, she's like, I don't feel this. Like there's something
they're
going on, you know?
oh, they're not really there. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
okay, something's happening. Got
yeah,
it.
yeah.
All right, I know what we need to do. Um, yeah, but I loved that. I know that was one of those things where, we were introduced to a few different force powers in this movie, or and this is one of them where like, how
This
does this work?
this is not one that Ryan Johnson came up with, though, because
Yeah, where was the first one?
I remember, after the fact, him tweeting pictures of, I can't remember what book it was, but he went back to some Star Wars book.
Legacy?
I don't know,
Okay.
but was showing people, look, that this is a force power that has appeared in other Star Wars stories. It's not one I came up with. It's one that I love. I think it's really
Mm,
cool. I found it
mhm.
in this particular book.
Yeah.
So, he got a lot of heat for making up something that wouldn't work, and he's like, I didn't make it up. Here it is.
Yeah, here it is, guys. Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing, like, this is it's always about kind of exploring the extents of what the Force is capable of, really, and
And that's the other
um,
thing. It's like, don't put this if it's this extraordinarily powerful thing, don't put it in a box and say it's only this and it's not that. And it doesn't work that way. It only works like this. And it's like, well, you don't know.
yeah,
You don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. um, but yeah, I don't know what you wanted to talk about with that scene, but I think when I think about that scene, um, it's really it's really special for a lot of reasons. One is it gives Luke the ability to die the hero, to
That's where I was
show
going. Yeah.
he has come back. Again, I said this at the top. This is a story about it's the trope of never beat your heroes for Ray. Um, and frankly, sometimes, Ray, you need to save your hero. Your heroes need saving too. And that's a hard thing for Ray to do. And frankly, that's not something that's easily done. So I think that was what this was all about. This story was like, how do you save Luke and help him become the hero again?
Which is a trope that George Lucas loves. He always talks about how a lot of times the father is saved through the son or by the
Hmm.
son. In this case, it's a father figure being saved in some ways by the daughter. But I think another thing is this is an opportunity to create Luke's finale in a heroic way that
Yeah.
is self-sacrificial.
Yeah.
And
And that
that's how
is the
this movie
spark.
opens, right? The movie opens with the sacrifice.
Right.
With and then we come back to this other sacrifice here. And in the middle we have Holdo with a sacrifice, a personal
Oh
sacrifice.
yeah. Yes.
So that's a theme throughout this story of selflessness in service of whatever this mission is. And we get to see Luke's finale. Like that's pretty darn heroic. That's
Hmm.
how Luke's story ends and preserves the opportunity for rebellion.
Yeah, I wrote down Luke provides one more legendary spark to the galaxy, and this time he sacrifices himself to do it. No one was listening to the broadcast that Leia was putting out there, but they'll listen to the survivors of Crate, and they'll listen
Hmm.
to what Luke did, and
Yes.
you see that at the very end, like the kids have got word now of what happened, and they're
Yes. I
reenacting it.
love that. I
It's
love
beautiful.
that.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point of Luke, the guy who destroyed the Death Star. Look what he just did now, and we need to join this resistance and be part of it.
Love it.
So to me, it's poetic. It's
It is
great.
poetic. That's a good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know it's not the Luke you always would have expected or wanted or preferred even. No, I don't want him to go through this, but I also don't want him to just be the guy that walks in, saves the day and walks out. Like there's no character development, there's no growth
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
This is important that it goes this way, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that there's what 40 years that pass between the
Yeah, 30, 40. I thought it was 30. I'm just watching you do math right now. It's fun.
and I was actually I wasn't doing math. There's just the monkey that plays the cymbals. That was my thought bubble for a second there. But
It's past
decades
your bedtime.
it is. Decades have passed, and
Yes.
this is what happens with people. Their stories evolve. They
Yeah.
they are at their core the same person, but things change around them, and maybe they interact with the world differently. And that's what happened with Luke. And I think he finds his way back to himself at
Yeah.
the end, and
There are
he's every bit as good as we knew that he was.
totally agree. There are so many storylines that we haven't even talked about yet in this movie. We could just go on forever about it, I can tell.
We have for
um,
the last 5 years, and we're going to talk about it again from some different angle and some different ways. Like maybe Luke's death will come up in our death and dying episode next time.
yeah,
Maybe.
has to, right? Because it's one of the biggest ones.
It's one of the main characters, one of the main deaths.
I mean, Han, Leia, and Luke. We got to talk about all three. That's what the sequel trilogy gave us was how do we
Death.
deal with the passing of our beloved heroes from the original trilogy, right?
It's the succession. It is the natural order of things as people
Yes.
And it's a lot about people kind of rising up to take their place.
Not to mention, I mean, we're getting into the episode now. Not to mention that the whole dark side and Palpatine's mission is about trying to survive and
Conquer death.
never conquer death, like to cheat death. Like
Yeah.
that's his angle. So that's a teaser for next episode.
Bum, bum,
Um,
bum.
all right, but there's a lot we didn't discuss. We didn't do the throne room scene justice. I've mentioned it a few times. It is one of the best scenes in all of the movies is what
No
happens
doubt.
with Snoke. But I want to ask you a few questions
Sure.
to wrap up. And we can kind of do these quick fire and like maybe a
Yeah.
couple sentences to kind of share where our view is and move on. But let's talk about some of the things that we heard after the fact that people may have complained about, and just let me know if you think that there's fairness to where people are, or if you don't think there's any base or if it's unfair.
Okay.
So the first one, Leia Poppins.
It didn't bother me.
Didn't bother you. Okay.
No.
I have thought about how else that could have been filmed so many times. I can't figure out another way.
I think when I rewatched it this past time, I really kind of honed in on Kylo flying over the ship, almost pulling the trigger, not pulling the trigger, and then kind of how brutal it was to see him sort of cringe when there's the impact and she gets sucked out into space and so on.
Yeah.
She is not force trained, but she's force sensitive. Like it didn't bug me all that much.
Plus, it was our first real chance to see her use the Force, and so like that's cool to me.
And it was something
That was special.
extraordinary. And Leia was extraordinary, so not too much of a surprise there. But
yes, agree.
Can I hit you with one?
Sure.
Maybe we do a little bit back and forth.
I like it.
People did not like the Yoda looked too much like a cheap puppet. Some people thought
Unfair. That's what he looked like in Return of the Jedi.
Return of Skywalker.
Return of Skywalker. Yeah, I was like, I'm trapped between like 3 movies right now. No, bad. See, what am I doing? Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. There we go.
Yeah.
That's what he looks like.
That's what he looks like. Yeah,
that's what
you're
he
right.
is.
You're right.
I loved it.
Some people didn't like it. Okay.
I thought that was like a good nod to like we could have done this in CGI, but we didn't.
I love practical effects. Everybody knows that.
Yep.
And that was my like grinning ear to ear moment when he popped up on screen.
Yes, agreed. Snoke, should he have died?
I mean, I thought Snoke was really cool. I wouldn't have minded getting more of him, but I think the way that the story evolved and the action that we got immediately following his death was super cool. So it worked for me.
So obviously worked for me. I think it's fair if you wanted more, if you felt like it should have gone a different direction or something like that. If it was teased a ton and then all of a sudden he was made to be all powerful and then just like that he's gone and dispatched. I can understand if you don't like that, but I much prefer what we got.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of how I look at that. All right, your turn.
Totally fair. Canto Bite feels too earthy. And one of the things that takes people out on Canto Bite is when I think Finn yells something about how the cops are there. And people didn't like the cops is a very human earth term.
I didn't even notice that. Actually, never noticed that.
Okay.
I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I mean,
that was one of the first things somebody said to me, by the way, was, you and I talked about The Last Jedi, but when I ran into somebody like I worked with or whatever, and they mentioned it, they were like, I didn't need Canto Bite.
So that was going to be my question for you. Was it pointless? A lot of people have said the whole the whole storyline was pointless.
I wouldn't say pointless. I mean,
yeah,
I liked a lot of what it gave us kind of indirectly. Of there's this whole thing of like these people got rich. These are ill-gotten gains, you could say. These are war profiteers. That's the dark side of something you don't typically see in the Star Wars story. So I like being exposed to that. I love the Fathiers, and
Yep.
I think the thing with Broom Boy is kind of cool. So
Yes.
that's all there on Canto Bite. Like I'm good with it.
Yeah, I like the whole like high society that is like war profiteering and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, I liked Rose's line of "Look closer." Like,
Yes.
what's wrong with this beautiful town? Look closer, she
That
says.
jumped out at me. Yeah, I love that.
I love the line and I love the lesson from it.
Yeah.
So the other thing though, I don't think it's pointless because without it, I think it's trying to teach us a really important lesson. Like, this isn't going to go the way you think. Our heroes are not going to win every battle. Our heroes are
Mhm.
not going to like it's going to magically go their way against all odds.
Mhm.
That was the other one. Like when the odds are not in your favor, you don't win all the time, right? If
Mhm.
C3PO was right there, he'd be like, "Look, we can't survive every time we fly through an asteroid field. Like we're not going to survive and like not every mission is going to go right." And that's all it was trying to do. And eventually it does, but it goes right because of Holdo and her light speed maneuver.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um so I think that's if you don't like it, I understand. So I'll call
Yeah.
that fair, but I wouldn't call it pointless.
Yeah.
Earthy, I don't know. Maybe, me,
Yeah,
maybe.
it's familiar enough where you're like, yeah, I know that there are places like that on Earth, but like,
Yeah.
it didn't make me go, why do we need this whole scene in this movie?
Yeah. Do you have any more?
Nope. Maybe we can draw the line there.
I have two more.
Two more. Yeah, go ahead. Go
If
ahead.
that's okay.
Sure.
Ray is a nobody.
I was totally bought into that. The
Yeah.
from the very beginning of Force Awakens when we meet her, I was totally bought into that. And
I think it's fair if you're not. That's all.
yeah, yeah,
Especially because then we kind of flip the script a little bit later on.
yeah.
So I think it's fair if you're not. But it worked for me in the moment, and it's worked for me how they made it make sense with her being a Palpatine. Then, so
I'll hit you with one. Rey's and Mary Sue. How could she learn to be a Jedi in just a couple of lessons?
how could Luke destroy the Death Star in just a couple days after being a moisture farmer?
Hey, I'm asking the questions here.
I'm, um, no, I don't think she is.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, yeah, there's probably a few others, but there were so many, and that's the unfortunate part. There were so many that people picked at. Um, but I think at the end of the day, we've kind of covered it. It's fair wherever you land on this.
Sure.
We loved it, and we continue to love it. I continue to love it with this watch, and I can't wait to just watch it casually again.
Yeah, totally.
So
We're about to head into the holidays. I'm sure sometime like over Christmas or something. I'll probably throw it on one more time.
yeah,
Enjoy it one more time this year, and it holds up for me. And I keep seeing new stuff, and I just love it. So
cool.
hope you guys love it too. And totally fair if you don't. And hopefully we haven't gotten you too worked up talking about how much we like it. But if you didn't, that's fine. And we're open to that dialogue, and you're welcome to let us know what you did or you didn't like about it. Maybe I can run through some of the places they can find us.
Hmm.
So we're on Twitter at Starbros Podcast. We're now on that cool Hive thing at Star Bros Podcast. There's a
Hmm.
pretty cool little Star Wars community brewing there. You can send us an email and say, you guys are wrong about The Last Jedi. And you can send us an email. We're at the Star Bros Podcast at gmail.com, the Star Bros Podcast at gmail. And you can find us on Facebook. And, if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment, subscribe. We're on the Baraxium channel. If you're listening to this, wherever it is that you get your podcast, because you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, just search Star Bros Podcast on whatever platform you like, and you'll find us. And then just make sure to leave a review if you like what you're hearing. Let us know what you like, and let us know what you want to hear more of, or if you've got a cool idea for an episode, we're open to that too. So
Exactly.
hit us up.
If you want us to talk about birth the next time
The
instead
beginning
of
of
death,
life. Yes, we
the
can bring it full
beginning.
circle. We're going to start with death. We're going to go backwards to birth and the beginning of life.
Let's just watch The Lion King, and call it good. The
I love
circle of
it.
life.
That sounds great to me.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you for going through all that. And I'll just say, hey, everyone, thank you again. Thank you for always being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you if you leave a review. It means a lot to us just to have that support. Thank you for sharing with your friends.
Yes,
Please keep doing that and
love that.
help grow our followers. and reach out. We don't want to just have followers for the sake of following. We want to know who you are and have a chat. So reach out and let us know what, like Keon said, what you want us to cover next. So thank you
Yeah.
for everything. Have a wonderful, happy, safe holiday, and may the force be with you. No, that's not how we end this thing. How do we end this
No.
thing?
No, but that's pretty nice. I like how
That's
you're
pretty
wrapping up.
nice.
I think we do say something else though.
We do. It
Yeah.
is your turn to say it, though.
I think we say, it's a wrap.
Yeah.